Everybody, it's Brian Nemhauser, and we've got the Real Hawk Talk podcast back tonight. We've got an awesome show here, a lot of stuff going on, and as always, got the crew with us. Evan Hill, welcome back from Labor Day weekend. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back. This is going to be a super fun podcast with Heaps. Hopefully he'll be joining us soon, but been enjoying the good weather. It's been sunny. It's actually kind of hot right now.
Well, and you got a new dog, right?
I did. A full chocolate lab. She is currently cuddling with my fiance in the other room. She is a sweetheart.
Nice. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
And Jeff Simmons, at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. How's it going, man?
Good, man. Busy day. I moved today. I had a fantasy draft. Just got made it on time. It was a long day, man.
Congrats for on your move, and thank you for making time for us. We appreciate it. And just joining us, our special guest tonight, Jake Heaps. Jake, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Let me give you a little bit more of an introduction for folks and I'm probably going to butcher some of this, but my memory of Jake Heaps is this: first burst on the stage for me at Skyline High, and throwing a lot of touchdowns to Cason Williams. And then as a Husky fan, broke my heart by choosing not to go to UW.
Yep.
And roundabout few ways, you ended up on the Seahawks, trying out for them and eventually playing a part of the practice squad, and got a really, inside view of what was going on with, Darrell Bevell and Russell Wilson in that quarterback room. And now you're running Russell Wilson's quarterback academy as well. So any key things I missed along the way that people should know about Jake Heaps?
Yeah, no, it was a great journey. It was a wild ride for me over the course of my career, but over the course of time, been able to experience so many different systems, be around great coaches on every level in terms of the quarterback position. So it felt like it's been a big blessing for me, especially at this point in stage and time in my career. It's fun getting a chance to play for the team I've always dreamed for in the Seahawks, and be with them over a few off seasons and getting a chance to develop a really close relationship with Russell and quite a few guys on the team actually. And it's been fun. So now running the Russell Wilson Quarterback Academy, and that's actually was a business that I was running on my own quarterback business. And Russell, kind of found out what I was doing, what I was engaging with in the high school kids and college level kids, and wanted to get involved. And, we ended up partnering and creating this academy. So it's very fun being partners with him in business and, being able to be teammates with him. So yeah, it's been fun.
It's fascinating. I mean, I think most people know Russell Wilson for his on-field accomplishments, and probably know him for, his wife and her fame and that kind of stuff as well. But he's also, a pretty shrewd businessman. If you wouldn't mind, share a little bit about what what was surprising to you, what you expected, and maybe what was a little different than.
Yeah. I think a lot of guys, they typically like to pick a couple things that they do in terms of their, investments and things like that. And Russell is very much hands-on in his business approach and wants to be involved in a lot of different things. And so, he's a guy that likes to be on the go 24/7. So, he in the off season, he wants to be go. In season, it's the same way. It's just kind of how he's wired, and I think that's what helps makes him a successful person.
Yeah. So I'm going to open it up for Evan and Jeff to get some questions here in a second, but I'm going to hog the mic a little bit longer. So two questions I've got for you here before I give it up for a second is one, I mean, all of us who are huge fans of sports, watch players come up through high school and into college and the NFL. You had a pretty amazing journey. What was What was it like getting to actually take the field wearing a Seahawks uniform? What of that experience was different than maybe you expected it to be?
Yeah, it was incredible. I think the biggest thing for me was I dreamed being a Seattle Seahawk for my entire life, and so I think that was extra special for me. I was a rookie with the New York Jets, and that was an incredible feeling. Being a part of the NFL and getting a chance to have that experience, and having a sense of you have accomplished the dreams and goals you have set out for yourself, and especially at that point in my career, kind of against all odds at that point. And then to be able to be a Seattle Seahawk was truly undescribable, and it was just a blast. And the fan base was great when I had my time there, and they're still great to me, this day. So I think that was a lot of fun for me, and to be able to step out on that field was truly incredible. A lot of emotions.
I'm guessing you had quite a few requests for tickets and a lot of locals around.
A lot of people to manage and unfortunately say no to, but I'm grateful for the support.
So one of the things I'm really curious about, and you started sharing some breakdowns that you've been starting to do on what you're seeing from the Seahawks run game, how you're seeing things change, and that was the thing that immediately made me want to bring you on the show to hear. You got a unique perspective, having sat there, seeing how the Tom Cable offensive line was blocking, how Darrell Bevell offensive scheme was set. You were in those rooms, and now seeing, with the new with Mike Solari at O-line coach, and with Brian Schottenheimer at OC. I'm curious, from your trained eye, what are some of the key differences you're seeing and how that offense is playing out?
Yeah, it's been fascinating to see kind of the new approach with everything. And I think people need to realize that, look, although things finished on a sour note and it was not the way people wanted it to continue over the last couple of years, Tom Cable and Darrell Bevell were able to produce a heck of a run on offense. And we're right there at the top in rushing and in total offense. And so, the way that they did things, there's not anything wrong with the scheme that they were running. I think just over time, I think it comes down to players. It comes down to talent. It comes down to execution. And so those two things just didn't match up. And I think what you've seen with Coach Solari and Coach Schottenheimer, they brought in a new system that's very much downhill. It's more multiple. With the Seahawks philosophy in the past, it had been, look, these are the certain run plays that we're going to have. We're going to have, X amount of run plays, and it doesn't matter if the defense knows what we're calling. We're just going to execute it better than them. And I think this staff is a little bit more under the guise of we're going to be multiple. We're going to run different run schemes. We're going to add different flares to the run to present a different look to the defense. And one of the big things just in terms of scheme, the old system was purely zone scheme, and they were heavy zone scheme, meaning that there was a heavy flow going to the zone scheme. So if you can picture this, you have 4 down linemen and you have 2 linebackers in the box, so a 4-2 box, and you typically have your Mike and your Will in the box, and let's say you have a nickel Sam covering a receiver. The center will be attacking the Mike linebacker, and everything will be flowing, and they'll leave the defensive end unblocked. And essentially, it's almost like a zone read in a sense, even when under center. And that's when you saw, Russell fake it and tuck and run it. The defensive end was his responsibility. Now in this, it's much more about leverage. It's much more downhill. And so now in a 4-2 box, they're not necessarily attacking the Mike anymore. Now they're working back to the Will linebacker. And so there's 2 different approaches. And I think with that approach, I think actually fits this group a little bit better. And they're responding well to it up to this point in the preseason. But we'll see how it happens when it comes real time in the regular season this Sunday.
Evan, you
Yeah, I got a few questions for you, Jake. So a little bit about me. I know you're a Skyline guy. I went to Redmond High School, so you kicked our ass plenty of times. Bad memories there. It will be painful to get over. But I'm sure you've had your eyes on Alex McGough throughout preseason. There's been a lot of talk about him, obviously selected in the 7th round. I know they just obviously brought in Brett Hundley recently. But you're a quarterback. You've obviously done this on a professional level. You notice things that we as an average fan do not notice. Do you think Alex? So I don't. For the fans that didn't notice this, McGough was just stashed on practice squad, I think yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Watching McGough in preseason, what do you think are his strengths? His drawbacks? What do you think his future is like on the team? Do you think he's a viable starter or a backup down the road, maybe even a potential starter? What's your read on him?
Yeah, well, you just opened it up for a big, long conversation there. I think Alex is a unique talent, and he really fits the mold. If you've gone back over the last, honestly, over Coach Carroll's tenure, the kind of guys that he brings in, and I guess three guys that really don't fit that mold is myself, R.J. Archer, and Austin Davis. But you see guys that he brings in that are athletic, that can run, and that they're hoping that they can develop into a passer, into a NFL quarterback that can manage a system. And so with Alex, I think that he's done a really good job up to this point in terms of taking the checkdowns. He hasn't been too greedy. He's taken the checkdowns when they were given, and he's made some splash plays. And I think over the course of time, if you've heard interviews from him, that's kind of what he wants to do. That's kind of what his game is since his time in college. But when it comes to the NFL, it's a completely different ballgame. You want to be able to capitalize on the splash plays when they present themselves, but you have to be able to march down the field and run an offense and run within the system and the scheme. And I think what Russell does so well is Russell is one of the elite pocket passers. And yes, I said pocket passer. He's one of the elite pocket passers in this league. And what makes him special is his ability to create outside of that. And so what he brings is such a unique trait. He's not a dual threat quarterback. He is, or he's a dual threat quarterback, but he's not a guy that's looking to run and create. He's looking to, play within the system and then evolve off of that. And I think that's where some of these guys in the past have really struggled. And I think Alex up to this point has done a great job making splash plays, taking checkdowns, which is great to see from a young guy, but hasn't shown that he could run the system at a highly efficient level in order to, let's say, win their favor of taking that backup role. And that's why you see them going out and getting a Brett Hundley. But I think overall, them putting him on practice squad, I like the move, and I think he can develop over time.
That's great. That's great info. So one other note, you mentioned a little bit about how this offense is going to evolve schematically and philosophically. Is there one offensive player, maybe it's an offensive lineman, that you would expect or hope will take the biggest step in 2018?
Gosh, I think there's a lot. I think, what we want to see, obviously, I think DJ Fluker and have him be healthy. I think what he adds to the run game, again, going back to a scheme fit, I think when you first initially signed DJ Fluker, it's exciting to have a big body like that. But you get a first-round pick who's been with 2 different teams in a short amount of time. That's not very promising, right? But I think in the preseason, he's really shown that he's a physical downhill guy in the run game. And I think Coach Solari's done a really good job with him in the pass game as well. I think one guy that I probably would like to see really develop, I think everybody's said this multiple times, but Jermaine Ifedi, you want to see growth out of him. But the real guy that I think will be awesome to see is Ethan Pocic. I think if he can really grow and develop, you've got a very, very exciting left side that could develop into a Walter Jones, Steve Hutchinson, type of situation. Robbie Tobeck, those guys. It'd be awesome to kind of see a left side like that again.
Jeez, you're getting me giddy. I can't handle talk like that, Jake. You get too hyped like that.
You see that kind of upside?
Yeah, I do. I think Ethan, it was a guy that initially came in. He played all different positions, but he came in as a center. And so I think last year, he played guard. I think he did well. I think it was a guy that needed more strength going in. And he really worked on that this offseason, got bigger. And overall, what I've seen from him, I've liked, and I think he has definite upside.
Evan, do you have more? Or you want to hand it over to Jeff? Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Jake. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, I'd say the people who don't follow the Seahawks closely, like the perception of this team is that the receiver group is Doug and no one else. Jimmy Graham's gone. Paul Richardson's gone. Tyler Lockett's coming off a couple injury seasons. From my perspective, the wide receiver group has looked surprisingly good in the preseason. What's your impression from as a quarterback of like the pass catching group and how they'll fit in this new offense?
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that. I think that this is a group that actually has proven in the preseason that this can actually be a special group. I think going into this, there were a lot of question marks. And to me, the biggest question mark was Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall is a guy that when was initially signed, I was really excited for. One, because I've gotten to have an inside look with him as being teammates with him at New York Jets and see what he can do. But from an overall standpoint, when you look at the numbers, this guy is a production monster. He's a production monster. He's a guy that is somebody that they've wanted for a long time, a big-bodied guy that can make the difficult catches, that can go up and get the football for Russell. And he fits all those things. And he's a savvy football player. He knows the game really well. It's not a question about production. It's a question about whether he can stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, I think this passing attack can be very dynamic because the thing is Doug needs help. He needs help because as of right now, if you have a Brandon Marshall who gets hurt, Doug Baldwin's getting double teamed. He's getting a lot of attention. And then from there, you got Tyler Lockett, which is a great piece. And I think he does a lot of great things. But again, you got to have guys that can, make you respect them. And I don't think Tyler is a guy that necessarily scares defenses when they game plan. He's got a lot to prove up to this point still. I mean, he's been a very productive player and he's explosive. But in terms of being a clear number 2 receiver, he hasn't been that guy up to this point yet for the Seahawks in the passing game. And then you got guys like Jaron Brown who really are eye-popping in the preseason, made some big plays, a big-bodied guy again who had 900 yards receiving for Arizona last year. David Moore made some great plays. He'll be another great special teams addition. Overall, looking at this receiver core, I think they've got a chance to be a really good all-around group for Russell. And you got nice couple key pieces, that do a lot of different things.
Yeah, David Moore really jumped off the field for me in the preseason. I don't know if they'll carry over, but he's a guy I'm going to be watching for sure.
Yeah, he did a great job, and I think the thing that was exciting to see was he did a great job with the contested footballs. And so, again, another guy that has shown playmaking ability. And again, over the course of the season, we'll see how that develops. But I think what you have here is some guys that can do some really nice things, bring different, unique elements. And I don't think that there's necessarily a guy that I look on this roster in terms of the receiver position and go, I don't know how you made the team. I feel really good about all these guys.
I'm curious, building on what Jeff was saying, and you bring up Brandon Marshall. I was going to ask you about him, so I'm glad you had that. But what do you think it means for someone like Russell Wilson to have a 6'5" Brandon Marshall and a 6'3" Jaron Brown? He hasn't really had that kind of size since maybe Sidney Rice.
Yeah.
What do you think that can do for him as a quarterback?
I think overall it just gives you trust. Those guys, just because they're big guys doesn't necessarily mean that they're guys that you can throw the ball up to. I think with guys like Brandon Marshall, with, Jaron Brown, they're guys that if you throw a 50-50 ball, they're either going to catch it or it's going to be incomplete. And I think that's so crucial because you have to have trust. And you have to be willing to take chances at times at quarterback. And if you have guys that are going to help you out and protect you, then you're going to be willing to take more chances like that and see more explosive plays. So that's kind of what I see moving forward. And again, I'm just crossing my fingers that this can be a very healthy year for Brandon Marshall, because if it does, I expect big production out of him.
One thing I like to ask guys who play in the Seahawks, it's what was it like to play for Coach Carroll? He's got such a fun personality, and some people perceive him as kind of a player's coach that can't maybe like discipline players. Yeah. What was your experience like with him?
To me, you're in the National Football League, right? So if you're there, get a check and to provide for your family, there shouldn't be guys that you have to babysit. That's just my personal opinion. So if you're a guy that we have to babysit to get you to play football, then you're not part of this franchise. And so I think they're very much of the same value, the same token. And again, I think, with Pete's standpoint is he allows the players to be who they are. He doesn't try to get them to conform. Again, like I said before, coaching styles are different. Coaching schemes are different. They're not right or wrong. It's just who can execute and see out the vision. And I think you got an example like Bill Belichick, who, I know for a fact that if guys post on social media about themselves in practice, he holds team meetings and will literally, call these guys out for just posting about themselves, a picture of them catching a ball, stuff like that. Whereas Pete is very much the opposite, and that's the part that I think is very refreshing about Coach Carroll, that you feel like you can go in and you can play mistake. You just feel like you're not worried about the mistakes. You're just going out there trying to give your very best effort to your teammates, to the franchise, and we'll see where it ends up taking you. We'll watch the tape, we'll review it, we'll coach you, we'll teach you, and we'll give it another shot. And so my favorite thing about that franchise was it was very much about teaching, not about critiquing, if that makes sense. So they were going to teach you exactly what you were doing right or wrong, and they were focused on trying to help you become at your best. They weren't necessarily trying to degrade you and make you feel dumb like you see sometimes on Hard Knocks and all these other places, which just allowed you to play more free. And the big thing that they always preach is, I don't care about what happened the last play, the last day. What matters is right now. Matters is the next play. And so I think as a player, it gives you confidence to go out there and just play 100%, give it your all, and not worry about the consequences, so to speak.
Do you have time for a couple more questions, Jake?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. So you started to give us some of the differences between what you're seeing with this offense, and especially with the run blocking scheme. That was one specific thing. Knowing that there's a lot of fans, hardcore fans, that are tuning in here and really like trying to learn the game a little bit and understand like a nuanced difference. What are maybe some things, maybe one or two things that fans can watch for that might be different than what they saw before?
Yeah, I think just overall, I think one of the big things is that in the run scheme, you never saw a pulling guard in the last scheme. In this scheme, in the run game, you'll see pulling guards. On one play, actually, the Chris Carson touchdown run that got called back versus LA Chargers. If you go watch that play in particular, you had Dwayne Brown pulling on at the left tackle position, and you had Justin Britt pulling from the center position, which is very unique and very cool to be able to utilize the talent that you have like that, because Justin Britt is one of the most athletic centers in all of football. I mean, he really is. And so to see them use a guy like that to be able to, pull and do some things like that, some unique things that are different from what we've seen in the past, I think is very cool. I think the other thing that you're going to see is it might not be different, but it'll be refreshing to see. These guys are going to be committed to the run game, which inherently brings the play action pass game. So that's a big reason why they brought Coach Schottenheimer in. So one thing that he, I guess the highlight of his coaching resume is his time from 2008 to 2010 with the New York Jets, what they were able to accomplish in the run game and how they were able to complement that in the play action pass game. And so Russell is obviously the best quarterback Coach Schottenheimer's had up to this point. And I think it's going to be very fun to see what this group can do. It's still somewhat of the same scheme in terms of plays and things like that, but it's Coach Schottenheimer's wrinkle to it. I think that's the evolution that you're going to see is, commit to the run game and then answer with some, play action pass deep down the field and also within, the intermediate side.
So that's great. And one of the things that people said, and I don't know how right or wrong this was, is that the Seahawks pass offense was pretty vanilla at times, under Bevell. They simplified things down, and there weren't, the rage so far lately has been around run pass option being more of a part of the way offenses are playing, and option routes in the receiving game. Is that something that you see evidence of showing up here more than maybe it was before?
No, I wouldn't say that necessarily. I wouldn't think from what I've seen, I don't think there's a big difference from that standpoint. I think it's very much still schematics, and they're lining up and running the plays that are executed. I think on a couple occasions you're seeing a couple more option routes, I guess, if you want to call them that. But overall, I think Coach Bevell's system over time, I think really what it comes down to is, a lot of frustrations were, okay, we've got a great weapon in Jimmy Graham. And I think that's where a lot of frustration stemmed from was, okay, Jimmy Graham, his first year he started to break out and then got hurt. The next year he had 900 some yards receiving, but very little touchdowns. The next year he had 10 touchdowns, but wasn't involved as much in the pass game. So he just never could really get that figured out and dialed in on a week-to-week basis. And so I think really what you're going to see with Coach Schottenheimer is hopefully that we're going to be able to take advantage of the mismatches that we have, use Doug in a lot of different ways, and be able to use the talents that we have in Brandon Marshall, Jaron Brown, Tyler Lockett, and also the additions of CJ Procise, for example. There's a big reason why he's still on the roster for all the different dynamic things that you can do, and expect the tight ends to have a really good season. I think, Nick Vanette's poised for a really good season. I think what Will Dissly offers to this group is going to be very exciting. So I'm really excited about, this group in general, but they're going to be tested very quickly. We're going to find out.
Yeah, they are.
This week in week 1 with the Denver Broncos. This is a very good defense. They're gonna be a good football team. They're missing some guys and they're trying to figure some things out. But overall, this is going to be a group that's going to attack the Seahawks offense, and we're going to find out what they're made of.
So what's next for Jake Heaps? What you've gone through quite an evolution in your career.
Yeah.
What are you hoping to see happen next?
Yeah, so right now, I think the big thing is we're very excited about RWQB, the Russell Wilson Quarterback Academy, and that's really where I've spent the majority of my time over the last year and a half, working with some of the top high school quarterbacks in the Northwest, and working with some of the top college guys. We're going to get into the NFL. We're really looking to make this thing big, which I'm excited about, helping the next generation. And then, getting into, some more of this stuff, breaking things down. I think this is something that, as I've heard from fans, is, and you mentioned something on it, is education, right? There's a lot of people giving their opinions, and so to speak, and there's a lot of insiders and all that stuff. And I think, people just want to learn the game and want to learn what's going on. And so I think that's something that I'm really excited to hopefully bring to the table for the Seahawks fan base. And, so that's what I'm going to be doing this season, and, going to be posting on social media and all those things. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. So where two things, where should fans go to find your breakdowns? Is that just going to be on your Twitter handle, or? Yeah.
So it'll be on my Twitter handle, and, if anything changes, I'll let people know, but on my Twitter handle and my Instagram, which are the same, JT Heaps 9. And, I think the big thing that I would love from everybody is, send me questions, tweet at me, and ask me for questions. And I would love to kind of help out the Seahawks fan base in terms of, education, and try and point out the real things that are going on.
Awesome. And for any parents out there that are wanting to get their kid enrolled in your quarterback academy, where should they go to look at that?
Go to our website, rwqbacademy.com. We run private training. We have a big 5-month off-season program that I'm really happy with what we're doing and the change that we're making in not only players on the field in their game, but also off the field, and seeing their confidence grow, seeing their leadership grow. It's been a lot of fun. We've worked with some of the best in the entire country, and we've also worked with those kids that are trying like crazy to start for their varsity team, their JV team, their freshman team, and hearing those stories of how they've been able to beat out the guy that was in front of them and things like that. We celebrate everybody on every level.
Well, Jake, it has been awesome having you come aboard and answer these questions for us. I know everyone in the chat feed is loving it and really appreciates the insights you're providing. And man, wish you the best of luck. It's great to know that you're reinvesting back in the community and growing the next crop of great quarterbacks. So we'll check you out on social media for all your breakdowns, and hopefully we'll have you on again later in the season.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jake. Have a good night.
All right. See ya.
That was pretty cool. Curious, anything jump out to you guys? I know Nathan's just joining, so we won't ask you, but anything that surprised you, Jeff or Evan?
The one thing, and I don't really want to, I don't want to like speculate too much, but it was really interesting to hear him compare like the Bevell offense compared to what Schottenheimer will be running and Solari will be running. Reading in between like the tea leaves a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, if you guys read something else here. But it seems like it really came down to execution problems in the previous era. He seemed to go to bat a little bit for Bevell, and it all makes sense. So it's just interesting. It'll be really interesting to see schematically how things change this year. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around the offense, so it was really cool to hear, his pinpoint analysis being a quarterback in that area. So it'll be exciting.
Anything jump out to you, Jeff?
Yeah, anytime anyone mentions Steve Hutchinson and Walter Jones, I kind of
wow, that was crazy, right? I was
that's a little much, right?
No, I literally almost jumped out of my chair when I heard
that's what I mean. That's what stood out a little bit to me. Like, it's good he's high on Posick, but
he
I think we gotta
Posick to Steve Hutchinson.
Yes, he did. He kind of
side would be as exciting as that, but I think it was being a little.
I liked it. I mean, it opened my eyes. I mean, he certainly knows more about it than any of us. And, he's high on Ethan Posick. He sees a guy that needed to add some weight, and he believes he did that this offseason, and he thinks he's got a high upside. So I think that was great to hear. Like, I mean, he was – and he also was saying he wanted to see more from Jermaine Ifedi. So it wasn't like he had a blind eye to people that needed to improve. There was one other thing. So, I mean, he talked about that the way the team was in previous years was pretty much they had a few things they liked to run, and they kind of said, we're going to run what we're going to run, and you're going to have to stop us. And that now the new system is, the word he used is multiple. I'm going to come at you with different schemes, and it won't be the same every time. And he gave some examples about, in the Chargers game, that Chris Carson touchdown that came back, where I'm going to go back and watch that now. But apparently Justin Britt and Dwayne Brown pulled, and you don't usually see centers and tackles pull on running plays. So I'm curious to go back and look at that. But it sounds like a little bit of innovation in the run game, and that does line up with the comment I told you guys about Chris Carson making at the end of I think it was maybe the first preseason game, that there were just more lanes to choose from. There were more options for the running backs to choose from in this scheme than there were in past last year. So it's encouraging, whether that translates into immediate success, we'll see. But it's not just changing the names. It sounds like there's real changes in how the offense is going to execute on the field. So that's cool.
Yeah, he mentioned trap plays.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's jumped out in the film. And I remember I was at this game that when the Seahawks played San Francisco, I think it was 2012, there was a road game. It was like 12-6 in San Francisco. It was like a really ugly game. Solari was the O-line coach in San Francisco, and they just ran that trap play with Frank Gore right at Seattle a bunch of times. I don't know if you guys remember this. And they were just dominating that game. It's kind of cool to see that kind of play. Carson's touchdown in Minnesota, it was the exact same scheme that Solari ran. And it was kind of cool to see that, because Cable did not run that at all.
That's a deep pull, dude. Nice. That is absolutely true. That was a nightmare. The Seahawks could not stop those traps for a while. It took them a while to adjust to that.
I was at that game. It wasn't fun to watch.
Oh man, it's brutal. So let's move along here. We have a lot to cover. The rest of the show we're going to talk about now is 53-man roster has been set. We've got some practice squad guys set. let's talk a little bit about our reactions to that. So we'll spend some time there. And then we're gonna get into looking into week 1, guys. Like, it is time. We'll talk a little bit about predictions for the year. How you see this team playing out prior to any games actually happening, and again, we'll end with looking a little bit at the Broncos games. We got a lot to cover. Hope you've had your coffee, because we'll be up here for a little while. So, Nathan, welcome to the show. Thank you for making. I know you've had a crazy day. What was your biggest? What was your first reaction to the 53-man roster, and maybe what was your biggest surprise out of that?
I didn't have too big of a reaction. I don't think there were any major surprises. Maxwell went on IR, and he was someone that started training camp. I think everyone kind of slotted in as a starting corner, and so that was a little surprising. But by the end of camp, I didn't have him on my final roster, so that he ended up, on IR wasn't too shocking. Jordan Roos getting cut, another guy where he wasn't good, so I'm not surprised that they moved on. But it is weird that the guy who was always coming in immediately after Fluker, and a lot of times would come in and play with the ones, was the guy they cut. And so I'm surprised that he seemed to be so high in the depth chart, and then was a guy that didn't make the team. The trades were surprising. I guess actually that's probably it. That's the one. Trading Marcus Johnson was a surprise. This is a guy that they went out. They traded Michael Bennett for a 5th-round pick and for him. I thought he played okay. He's supposed to be a special teams guy. He really seemed like a guy that was just going to make it, and then they flipped him for kind of a random tight end that wasn't probably going to make the Colts. And so that was probably the biggest surprise. But nothing too really, I didn't think there was anything too shocking altogether.
How about you, Jeff?
Honestly, my biggest surprise was that the Seahawks didn't do anything really unconventional with their roster. Pretty much every year when the 53 comes out, most of us end up scratching their head about something like crazy. Like last year was Casey Williams, or instead of McAvoy, McAvoy didn't make the team instead of Kaysen. And the 2 moves I really wanted to see on this team were 1, Poona Ford making the team, and 2, Darbo not making the team, because I didn't want to see a guy who's done nothing make it because purely of draft status. And every pretty much beat writer had Darbo on their 53 the Friday or the Thursday, and I couldn't understand it. All year we've been talking about it. So those are the 2 moves I really wanted to see, just based on, and they did that. And the one guy I wasn't really high on, Brandon Jackson on the D line, ended up getting released the day later. So 1 to 53, it went pretty good. Usually I wasn't left scratching my head at all, which really surprised me, because every year they do something that I can't understand.
Evan, guys have taken up a lot of the big ones, but what was your reaction? Anything that you were hoping to happen that didn't happen?
No, like the guy said, a lot of expected things happened. The Maxwell thing threw me for a little bit of a curveball, but I'm just looking at the roster right now, and one player that we didn't really honestly talk about enough, I think, was Delano Hill. I'm honestly kind of surprised he made the roster. I know a lot of talk is on Amara Darbo for not making the roster, and he's a 3rd-round pick, and obviously Hill, I think, was selected in the same round. Darbo hasn't been healthy, hasn't really done anything, but neither has Delano. And I've been really optimistic about Delano, and I think he could be a future contributor, but I was kind of surprised to see him make the roster.
When they made that trade for Luwani, I thought for sure Hill was gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought that spelled the end for Delano. I was like, boom, this is coming out of left field. But, he made the roster, and good for him. But it was a little shocking. But the Marcus Johnson thing was a little weird, just because they just traded for him, and then they shipped him off 3 months later or something. So whatever. I think did the tight end make the roster that they signed? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that obviously spells really bad things for Ed Dixon not being ready anytime soon. I assume, right?
Well,
I mean, he can't come back for 6 weeks, right?
That's right. He was placed on the non-football injury, the NFI list, and
what is injury? Like what happened? Where did it happen, and how? Like, this is so mysterious.
he was on an ATV. And
stop it! Oh, stop it! Oh, jeez.
No,
It's a groin with him, right?
they've talked about a quad. They've talked about a hamstring. You know, who
This
knows?
is not a good start to a pretty decent contract we gave in free agency.
I am like, I did start having conversations with people about comp pick formulas and whether that's part of the thought process here. Like, you know, if the Seahawks decide to cut bait on some of their play, you know, like if they cut like Dixon and maybe like 3 other guys or something like that, then they earn a 4th round comp pick. And I don't think that's out of the question. I really don't. Like, we'll see how the season goes, but they might just be seeing if other tight ends they're going to use this as an opportunity. Ed Dixon clearly wanted to come back. He tweeted out, ready for the season. He tweeted out, not happy with the decision, but I'm, you know, I'll go with God's plan, or whatever he said. So, yeah, it seems like the Seahawks could have had him back and chose not to, which to me indicates the team really wants to see what they have in these other tight ends, and maybe they don't need Dixon, and maybe he's not going to come back. You know, they could just cut bait as a possibility there. So
yeah, I'm just looking at his contract right now. So he has total guarantees, $3.6 million at signing. So if they wanted to cut him, we're looking at a dead money hit of $3.6 million. So actually not the end of the world. I thought it was a little bit more than that, but they're a little tight up against the cap right now. So
yeah. Well, I mean, they've got some other guys they could cut to create some cap room if they wanted.
Yeah.
One of them was Nico Thorpe. You know, it was interesting. He didn't play at all during the preseason, and he made the squad. That was a bit of a surprise to me. You know, he's a good special teams player. At least he's proven that. I think the trade for Simeon Thomas was interesting. Here's a guy that's 6'3". I think he's got like 35-inch arms. I mean, like, he's got like go-go gadget arms, and did not make the Browns. So, you know, take that for what it means. I don't think he's going to come and be a perfect fit right away, but you know, look, he's an interesting prospect to add to this group. You've got Trey Flowers at 6'3", and one of the things that's a little bit, I don't know if I'd say surprising, but at least a question for me when I looked at the 53 was backup nickel. And, you know, if Justin Coleman ever needs to take a breather or is out for a little while, who's the person that steps in? Because Simeon Thomas and Trey Flowers are not built to be nickel corners. And so I think you're talking about Nico Thorpe. And that's not necessarily the greatest option either. So I think they're a little thin at that spot. I guess you could see a situation where they slide in like I could see Shaquille Griffin playing nickel corner, but I think it would be not a great use of his talents to move him inside there. So that was one area I had some questions about. But, you know, the other guy I was a little bit surprised that made the roster is Trey Madden. You know, I don't know that they need a fullback on this roster. I have to assume that he made it based off of special teams and his role in the special teams. So yeah, those are some of the guys that surprised. We got some new names today. Was it today or yesterday where Jermaine Grace was added, linebacker, as well. So they picked him up from, let me double check where they got him from.
Who'd they drop?
What's that?
Who'd they drop?
McKissick went on IR.
I think it was from Cleveland.
Yeah, I thought it was from Cleveland again. Yeah, it was from Cleveland. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're just filling in their special teams group, but
kind of bummed about McKissick.
Well, he can come back. I mean, he was on the roster, and he's been placed on IR. So that was one of the things I learned, you know, is we knew that they had to be on the 53-man roster in order to be able to be placed on the IR to return this season. What I thought is that they had to be on the week 1 active roster, but the week 1 roster in order for that to be possible. Apparently, just being part of the 53-man initial roster is enough, and they can place them on IR right after, which is a little bit of a bummer because they didn't do that with DeMarco Jones, and I was really hoping he was going to come back this year, but I knew it was probably unlikely, so that was a bit of a bummer. So, sorry, someone have something they were about to say? All right. So let's start talking about, now we've got this 53-man group out there. Where are you guys at on predictions? You know, I went through and wrote my season preview on Monday and went through the schedule. I always just wait till the last second and just based on feel how I think things are going to go. I ended up with 9 wins, which was honestly actually more than I expected to come up with. But that's where I ended up. And there was arguments I could have made where I could have flipped a couple games to wins that were losses, and definitely a few that I could have flipped from losses to wins. So let's start with Jeff, because you're probably gonna be the most reasonable of the group. Where do you end up? Like, we've got the pessimist and we've got the optimist. I want you to be somewhere in the middle.
I'm similar range to you, Brian. I'm somewhere between 8 and 9 wins. Probably a month ago, I would have been closer to 7, which is strange. This is a month ago. Let me go here. I think the offense is going to be better than I thought. The receiver group has really jumped out to me in training camp. We were really skeptical about them when we did that training camp preview show. We were kind of laughing at how bad they looked on paper. Every game, someone's shown up. The 5 guys they kept, 1 to 5, all look pretty good. So I think the offense is going to be a lot better than I initially maybe thought. I was very skeptical of the Schottenheimer hiring. I still am to an extent, but defensively, I'm a little worried. I'm worried about the secondary, the safety play. The safety play is what scares me the most. If Earl doesn't show up, that's what's holding me back from going into Evan level. Maybe not Evan levels, but a 10-win season. Went from Cam Earl to T2 and McDougall. That's what's really pulling me back.
Jeff, which 7 games are they going to lose?
Do you want me to go through it?
Yeah. No.
I think we should do this together. We should walk through the schedule, I think.
All right, let's do it. I'm pulling up a schedule. We're going to go game by game. All right?
Because losing 7 games is dumbfounding to me.
I've got them with 9 losses.
Oh, God.
All right.
You're right.
Here we go. Week 1, Seahawks versus Broncos. I have them as a loss.
Yeah, loss.
This game.
The people on audio are missing out. You really do need to watch the YouTube podcast to see Evan's face. You're not missing anything out with my face, but Evan's face a little bit.
This is Case Keenum, guys. Really?
We'll get into the Broncos before we break it down. All right. So
this team's lost to like Austin Davis before, right? I mean, let's not. This is I don't know if so we can pause on this one for just a second, because I think in a lot of scenarios, like, you just think, okay, Denver Broncos, that team's like, it's not the same Super Bowl team, right? They're not that great, but the Broncos are something like 85-8 in home openers or something like that. Like, it's ridiculous how well they do. It's mile high. And the Seahawks are not particularly good on road openers, so there's a lot going against them on this one.
Yeah, and I don't know that. I mean, I asked Twitter, and it was amazing how many people misunderstood the question. But it's really hard to think back to the last time there was not an infuriating road opening game for the Seahawks. Like, even the 12-7 win they had in Carolina in 2013, which is the only road opening win the Seahawks have had in the Pete Carroll era, by the way. That was a brutal game. I mean, Russell, I think, had maybe 3 picks in that game. They had to score at the very end to win it. It was just terrible. But I mean, it got all the way back to 98 for me to find like a really quality Seahawks win. You could say 2004. I think they beat the Saints, but like that was like 21-7. But anyway, it's not common. So,
and the actual number on the Broncos, they're 51-8 in their last 59 home games in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and those include games where the Seahawks were like clearly better than their opponents. Like 2014 Seahawks lost their road opener, for example. All right, so let's go to the Bears. So 3 out of the 4 of us were lost. Is that right on the Broncos?
Yes.
Yep. All right. Bears. Seahawks at Bears.
Please answer this one correctly, guys. Please, for the love of God. Mitchell Trubisky. Please.
They've lost to bad quarterbacks before.
God. Oh,
It's Khalil Mack and Jermaine Ifedi, and they're on the road. Like,
my God.
I get it. You're an optimist, Evan. But who is the one Seahawk player that you're not an eternal optimist about?
His
Did we
name
lose
starts
Evan?
with an
Did he
I.
just freeze in that position?
So I've got them as a win. I've got them beating the Bears.
So do I.
Nathan, come on. Mitchell Trubisky. Is that how you say his name?
It is.
Don't become unmakeable. Come on.
I don't have a good feeling about this one. I think both of these games, these first 2 games, are going to be incredibly ugly, and maybe they'll win one. But I think we're going to come away from week 2 feeling a lot worse about this team than we do now, and maybe not for any real good reason. Like these are not good matchups for this team, and so I don't see them winning either of these.
But the Seahawks offensive line is good, Nathan.
Is Jermaine Ifedi good? I was talking to somebody on the interwebs the other day who said that Jermaine Ifedi was a below replacement level player, and I have bad news about who he's going to be lining up against in week 2 and week 1.
I have bad news for Khalil Mack and Von Miller. We have a fancy new tight end who can block anybody to hell. He is better than Justin Britt at blocking on Twitter. I'm serious. He's that good.
All right, so we had 3 of us with win and Nathan with a loss against Chicago. Yep. Okay. I'm counting on you guys to keep track of your scores here. So, week 3 is Dallas at home opener. I've got that as a win.
Win.
Me too.
Yep.
Interesting. That's not a gimme. Dallas has got talent. They might even have Earl by that point. Wouldn't that be interesting?
It's a home game, and it just feels like we can match up well against Dallas. I actually, okay, Ben Baldwin would hate me. I don't think Dak Prescott's going to have a good year. I don't think he's that great.
He didn't have a great year last year.
I know. I don't think he's going to bounce back like so many people are saying.
So all 4 of us had that as a win. That's surprising. Week 4 is at Arizona. I've got that as a win. I don't have a lot of respect for this Arizona squad. Everybody's got that as a win. All right, interesting. So we got a 2-game winning streak no matter what. Lock it up. Week 5. This is home against the LA Rams.
This is a loss. I'm sorry.
That's a loss. So, I mean, you got them going 4-0 to start.
Yeah, but, I mean, they're not going to – I actually think they drop both games against the Rams.
Yeah, but Jeff's point is that if they were beating Denver, basically you've got them at 4-0 to start the season, which would be pretty – not a lot of teams that start 4-0 that miss the playoffs.
Totally.
I've got them at 3-1 to start. It sounds like that Jeff, you do as well. I think Nathan's got them at 2-2.
Yep.
So then loss to the Rams. Everyone's got them as loss to the Rams. At Oakland, week 6. This is in London. I've got them winning that game.
That's a win, especially without Khalil Mack.
The only thing that makes me nervous about this game is that it's in London, but this should be a win.
Interesting.
Yeah, everyone keeps talking about Khalil Mack is playing them week 2. They got a huge break in week 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Oakland without Khalil Mack is a bad team.
Yeah, we could do a whole show just on Oakland, and we're not even an Oakland
No, it's not.
podcast, but oh my God. I mean, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not a Raiders fan. That is a brutal weekend they just went through. And there's not a lot of good reasons for it. All right, so everyone's got that as a win too. Interesting. So then we got a bye week. Then we get into week 8, and this is at Detroit. I've got that as a win. I don't have a ton of respect for Detroit. That's one of the ones I think the Seahawks have a chance of surprising some people.
I do not. I have this is a loss.
I think that's a loss. I really do.
I love that I'm more optimistic than Evan in one situation. How about you, Jeff?
I have that as a win. I'm with you. I don't buy Detroit at all. They don't have any blue chip players. They don't have the kind of guys that disrupt what Seattle does.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a lot of points.
There might be a lot of Seahawks games.
There might be a lot of games this year. Yeah. All right, so let's week 9, home against the Chargers of Los Angeles.
Loss.
I got that as a loss.
I also have it as a loss.
Would you say they're going to go like 12? How many losses? Okay.
11 and 5, Nathan.
What are you up to now?
We're ready.
3? All right.
All right, so everyone's got that as a loss. I think that's a winnable game, by the way. I think the Chargers are a little overrated, but we'll see.
All right, so we're week 8 here, or 8 games in.
Yes.
What's everybody's 8 game halfway through the season record? I got them at 3 and 5.
I got 5 and 3.
5 and 3.
5 and 3.
It's going to
4 more wins.
I don't know. So week 10, this is at the LA Rams. I'm assuming we all have that as a loss.
And I also have it as a loss.
All right, so it's 5 and 4 for us now, Evan. Home against Green Bay, I've got this as a loss.
Win.
Loss.
I disagree.
You disagree with
Loss. I'm not going to root against Seattle, but I am going to be excited to see Jimmy catch like 3 touchdowns in that game.
Oh no, that's horrible.
It's going to happen.
You can't be.
It's going to happen.
The person that like is a bigger fan of the player than the.
I'm not. I hope the Seahawks win 28-21. I'm just saying.
Very careful.
I hope that one of the Seahawks takes the ball and punts it into the stands after they've knocked Jimmy. Well, they've knocked Jimmy down. I'll just leave it. I'm so happy he's not on the team anymore. I did not like that guy on our team. All right. So, by the way, that's a primetime game. I don't know if that changes anyone's mind, but it's a primetime game. Thursday night game. Those are tougher for the traveling team. So Green Bay will be coming on a short week to Seattle to play in primetime. Not out of the question that the Seahawks win that game. And if you're a Packers fan, what team has tormented you more than any other? The Seattle Seahawks.
I mean,
is that true?
Oh yeah, you talk to Packers fans like.
Oh yeah.
I feel like we've lost the last 2 games by like 100 to 10. Like
Green Bay, very different in Seattle. Some of them are.
Right. There's some Golden Tate pain still lingering.
There's 2 losses there. There's the Hail Mary and that NFC Championship.
No, there's also the season opener in 2014 where they blew the doors off them.
But those are 2 bad losses.
Yeah, those are both those other bad. All right, so that's a loss. It's what we got right now. Week 12 is at Carolina. I've got that as a loss, which for me makes it a 4-game losing streak at this point.
That's a win.
It's a win. What?
Carolina.
Yeah, I'm with Evan here. I don't think Carolina's any good this year.
No, they're not good.
Really?
They've lost a lot. Their O-line's banged up. Their secondary kind of stinks.
They've lost so many pieces on the offensive line. Haven't they had like 2 ACL tears or something already?
Well, we all missed, I think, the biggest surprise on the 53-man roster, which is Deion Jordan. I don't know how none of us mentioned him, but like, if he's actually going to play and contribute this year, that's a game that he could be a difference maker. But without him, I have questions about who's there on the Seahawks line to take advantage of a bad offensive line for Carolina. And that Carolina defense is pretty tough. That's, by the way, that's going to be a 10 a.m. game.
No. So I have a problem. I have them at 3-7 right now.
I don't think you're getting to 7, man.
I don't know how I'm getting to 7 because I mean this one's what's hard about some of these are toss-ups. Like the Lions one, like between like the Lions and the Panthers and like that Bears game, like I don't think they're gonna lose all of them. But when I look at anyone individually, I kind of think that I think they're maybe more likely to lose than win. So I don't know. I feel like I should give this Panther one a win, even though I don't really think they will, but I'm not scared of this Panther team too much. I mean, there's a Cam Newton factor where he can go off in any game and take over and beat them, but I don't feel like he's been particularly good against them at any point. So, yeah, I was leaning win, and then you threw that 10 a.m. thing at me. But yeah, win.
Oh, nice. All right, so I'm the lone pessimist on that one. Interesting. All right. Well, we roll into week 13, and this is a home game against San Francisco. This is a Sunday night game, prime time. I've got that as a win. I've got them sweeping San Francisco this year.
Yep.
I'm looking ahead a little bit, but yeah, I got the home game as a win. Anyone feel differently?
No.
I feel like Nathan is
build up wins here.
He'd have like a 3-13. That's kind of where his real like heart is on the Seahawks this year.
It's just like I said, it's hard because I look at there's these 50-50 games or 45-55 games, and like I feel like there's a lot of these where they're not real favorable to Seattle, but I also don't think they're going to lose all of them. So I'm just going to call a couple of these wins because I think that it'll shake out that way, even though I don't know if these are exactly the ones that end up winning.
The funny thing is I kind of have the opposite, and then I look at these and I see 50-50 and I think about Russell Wilson and this offense, and I'm like, the defense can just not be horrible. They're gonna win a lot of these games. Like that's the part that I keep coming back to. But because Russell Wilson's a better quarterback than almost anybody he's gonna play on this schedule. So usually better quarterbacks win the game. So we all were at win on that game. So now we're in week 14. So before we go, we're 3/4 of the way through the season. I have the Seahawks at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-6. Yeah.
Oof. I have 8-4.
8-4. Wow. Jeff?
5-7.
5-7. What do you have?
I have 7 wins at this point.
Okay. All right. Last quarter. This is home against Minnesota. This is a Monday night game. I have them losing this game, and this was a tough one for me, especially based on the preseason performance. Like, primetime Monday night, not hard for me to see the Seahawks winning that one, but I have a lot of respect for that Minnesota team, especially that defense.
Pete Carroll teams just performed so well in primetime at home. It's just that's hard for me to see the Seahawks losing that game.
It is not hard for me to see the Seahawks losing that game. They are that's one of the easy losses on the schedule, I think.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think that's a loss. They're probably the worst matchup for Seattle on a lot of levels.
Jeff is taking on the persona of Captain Obvious tonight, so that was good. I like that.
Watch the Seahawks first team offense against their first team defense.
It's preseason. We're gonna throw out everything about the Vikings because of a half of preseason football where they scored 13 points and I think would have been behind if their kicker had made their kicks, right?
With no Everson Griffin.
And injuries and all that, but yeah, it's preseason. I don't know. I'm not throwing out everything we know about these.
I mean, I'm with you on that. They showed me a lot in that game, and it's not enough to where I would say that I expect them to win. But I would have said that is a no chance win. before that game. After watching them play that game, I think that the Seahawks have a real shot.
By that logic, shouldn't everyone have picked a loss against the Chargers? I don't think we all did pick losses against the Chargers.
No, I came out of the Chargers game much more encouraged than a lot.
That was the game where Fetty just got like obliterated by Melvin Ingram.
Yeah, but now we know that George Fant is an 82 pass blocker, ready to come off the bench at any time. And
there's a really smart football writer that I follow on Twitter who talks a lot about how the Seahawks value run blocking over pass blocking.
Yeah,
has predicted, I feel like, a lot of offensive line battles correctly by going with that principle.
That was a different offensive line coach.
That's true.
And in fact, if you look at some of the players the Seahawks acquired recently, including Jordan Thomas, am I getting that right?
Jordan Simeon. No, Jordan Simeon, right?
I think it's something like that. The guy from the Raiders. He is a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. And I think that's another sign that we might be seeing Solari's impact on personnel in a way that we hadn't before. So, all right, so let's keep rolling on. At San Francisco in Week 15, I've got them winning. I just don't have a lot of respect for the San Francisco team. I think they are way, way overblown. So Evan's nodding. He's got a win for the Seahawks. Nathan and Jeff, this is a audio podcast. I want you guys to be able to vocalize your responses. I got 2 thumbs down.
Stop it! They're not gonna lose to Santa Clara, Nathan. Please. Garoppolo?
Hey, Jimmy Garoppolo played one drive against the Seahawks, and he flew down the field and scored a touchdown.
He did. So you got this as a loss. Jeff?
Fortunately, I do also.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
I have a split with them. It's not to do with their team, really. I just have a lot of respect for Kyle Shanahan, how he's picked apart this defense when it's been at its best. I'm scared of what Kyle's going to do against this defense this year.
Their roster is so bad, though.
I know, but Rex Grossman went to Seattle with Kyle calling the plays and won a couple of years ago.
Oh.
I'm with Evan on this one. I
hope you did it right. I can't stand that team.
You guys are missing how much 49ers fans and media are terrified. You think our pass rush is bad? There are a lot of people that were talking about that even after the Khalil Mack trade that the Oakland pass rush is significantly better than the 49ers. So, you take an improved offensive line and Russell Wilson into San Francisco or Santa Clara as it may be. I think the Seahawks got a great chance in that game. All right, Week 16. This is home against Kansas City. This is a Sunday night game. God, there's a lot of primetime games this year. By the way, that Chicago game in Week 2 is primetime too. Monday night. I didn't realize that. That's going to make that game harder. I might switch to Nathan on that one. But anyway, I've got them beating Kansas City at home. That could easily be a loss. But I don't know if I'm a true believer in Mahomes yet.
This is a toss-up game.
Yeah, I have no idea what to do with this Chiefs team. So I'm going to give them – what's that?
Depends on Mahomes.
Yeah.
They're kind of like the Seahawks to an extreme. Like their offense could be as fun as any team in the league with all the skill they have, and their defense could be one of the worst by far in the league. They have no talent. They got rid of Marcus Peters. Other than Justin Houston, they're bad. So they're going to be in the shootouts all year.
Yeah, so I gave the Seahawks a win on this because it's a home game, but I really don't have a good feel for this at all.
Yeah, especially that late in the season, depending on how things are going. I mean, if the game counts, like towards playoff contention, if that's a real option for the Seahawks at that point, the chances go way up. But it's a tough one to call.
December football, this game's a goddamn win. Telling you right now.
I don't think we have anything else to talk about then on that.
My prediction, it's not 11-5, it's 12-4, Nathan.
Wow. All right, so did everyone have that as a win? All right.
Yeah.
Final game of the season is home against the Bruce Arians less Cardinals. They've beaten the Seahawks in Seattle for years now. Is this the year that they stop that? I say yes. The Seahawks are going to win that game.
Yeah, that should be a win.
Yeah. So that's where I get to my 9-7. I've got a stretch where they win 5 out of 6 games early in the season and are 5-2 at some point. The second half, 4-game losing streak, and they finish, 4-4 over their last 8. Is how I have it going. So, Evan, you had the high mark. You had 12-4 is where you said you ended up.
Yeah.
From your mouth to God's ears. And Jeff,
9-7.
9-7, and Nathan.
I got them to 7 wins. They closed out the season 4-2, and we're excited to go into 2019.
All right. What's interesting? I found this interesting. So I put a poll out that had season win predictions for the Seahawks, and you only get 4 slots in your poll, so I couldn't do too many, but I had 10 plus games, 9 games, 8 games, or 7 or fewer games. And I thought that there was going to be more pessimism in the based on what I see on Twitter and people interacting with everybody. I just saw a lot of muted opinions. Number one choice, 36% had 10 plus wins. 34% had 9. So 70% of the people that responded, this is a couple thousand people. 70% of the people that responded believe the Seahawks are going to win 9 or more games.
That first half of the Vikings game was like a 2-win swing in every Seahawks fan's expectations.
I think that's true.
They scored 13 points in a half, and everyone's like, Super Bowl, the playoffs, come on.
New year, Nathan. New offense, new scheme, new philosophy, new coaches, new players. It's going down. This is the year of shootouts. I'm telling you, this is the
Here's
year
the thing, though.
Russell Wilson could win MVP.
Even if this offense is as good as maybe we think it could be, Pete hates shootouts. Pete talked a lot about how fun that Texans game was, but he also talked about how, basically he doesn't like it, and he thinks that it's bad when your offense scores points because then the other offense tries to score points, which in the insane world of the NFL is probably true. And so I wonder, that Washington game where they came out and they just decided that they were going to just flow play that game, that it was Washington, that they didn't need to try, and then their kicker went and missed a bunch of kicks, and so it kind of shot him in the foot. But they'll do stupid stuff like that, and maybe that was Bevell, but that's a Pete thing, I think. And so even if Shoddy's ready to turn into the next McBay, Pete might put the reins on him a little bit.
Yeah, Carroll in shootouts is kind of like the guy that walks into a party and a dance battle breaks out, and he's trying to act like he fits in. He doesn't really know what to do with his hands or his body, and it's just kind of around. This, by the way, happens to me all the time, so I'm from personal experience. But I don't think Pete knows how to handle shootouts. I think that he's stop, slow down. I need you to let me do something crazy at the end of the half that wastes 4 minutes of time for no good reason. And I want to waste a bunch of timeouts on bad challenges. So, yeah, I hear you, but I think you're forgetting, Nathan, and I'm not surprised that you're forgetting a key factor here, which is that Michael Dixon is worth 2 wins by himself. Sure. It's going to be huge.
Sure.
Yeah. I've got a lot of people wanting Michael Dixon to play a larger role in the team. There's people that want him to play halfback. People want him to rush the passer.
They want him to play a position that actually matters.
They see a legend and they want to apply it in more than his current spot. So let's shift and talk a little bit about the Broncos game as we close up. I know we've been on here for a while, but Interesting things. I listened to I will not say which, but a very hard to listen to Broncos podcast yesterday, and heard some of their responses to their 53-man roster. A couple things that stuck out to me were Sua Cravens, a safety from the Redskins, a free agent signing they had, was a big part of their defensive plans. Specifically, the Broncos had trouble defending tight ends last year. And Cravens was a big part of how they thought they were going to address that. He was put on IR, so he's out. And additionally, Clinton McDonald was signed as a big part of their defensive line. He was cut. So some interesting, names there and some interesting impact. What I heard, and I think makes some sense as I read a little bit as well, is the Broncos really struggled. They had a horrible quarterback play last year and had over 30 turnovers, and a lot of those were interceptions, and the defense just couldn't make up for it. The case to be made for the Broncos being better this year largely is about that Case Keenum is just going to turn the ball over less, be more responsible with the ball, and that's going to allow their defense to make a difference. So I'm kind of curious. We already talked about what our predictions are for this game, so we're doing this a little bit in reverse, but Evan, what are you thinking about for this Broncos game? What are you hoping to see from the Seahawks?
Yeah, well, the Broncos are relying on a lot of youthful talent, a lot of rookies, just like the Seahawks are too. But I just don't think they have the offensive firepower to score more than the Seahawks will. I just don't see Case Keenum, Royce Freeman, and their offensive line putting up more points than we do. I actually think our defense is going to be play surprisingly well on Sunday, and I think Chris Carson's going to have a big game on the ground. This to me, like I've preached a million times before, this year is the year of the Seahawks offense, and we're going to outscore a lot of opponents, and our defense is not going to be consistent. I am telling you that right now. There are going to be games where our defense is extremely inconsistent, extremely frustrating, and will probably choke away the game for us once or twice. But this year is the story of the offense, and this offensive line is newly improved. We've got Chris Carson, who looks like a beast. We've got a Hall of Fame first-round running back that all of analytics Twitter loves. We have a future MVP. I'm super excited about our offense. I can't stop talking about it.
So, Nathan, you've got them as a loss in this game. What do you think would have to happen for them to be able to win it?
They're going to have to just play a really clean game, I think. I think being on the road, opener, they're young. You're probably going to have Shaquem out there instead of KJ. Is that official yet? Is that or is that going to be?
Yeah, it's pretty official.
Yeah. The cornerback situation. I don't think this game is like unwinnable by any stretch, but it's just a bad situation, and it's a team that's their first. I mean, this is a really different team, and it's the first time that they're all going to be really coming together as one team to play, and they got to do it on the road against a not great team, but a solid team. And so, if they can play really cohesive, mistake-free, do all that kind of stuff right, I think they can win. But yeah, I think it's going to take a lot.
Yeah, Jeff, how do you feel about Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas against Shaquille Griffin and Dante Johnson?
Yeah, so the interesting thing, we haven't really talked about Dante Johnson. That was one of the big things to come out of the roster. He's probably starting a week 1.
Oh yeah.
The way Denver's been playing is they've been using a lot of 3 receiver sets, and it's been Thomas on the outside, their second-round pick, Cortland Sutton, on the outside, and Sanders is playing inside. So I think Sanders versus Justin Coleman is the big matchup in this game. I think Griffin's going to match up with Thomas, and I think Dante Johnson goes up against Sutton, the more bigger. So Keenum had really good success with slot receivers last year, whether it was Thielen or Diggs. And Sanders has been moving around. He's been getting like a crazy amount of targets from Keenum. I clearly had a fantasy football draft to make. So, yeah, I think that Dante Johnson versus Sutton might be the matchup that swings this game either way. Because I think Coleman might be one of the more reliable players on this defense, and he's the one who's going to be guarding Keenum's probably favorite target. So that's kind of the matchup I'm looking for in this game.
Something that will be, I agree that that's an interesting matchup, but I think more than what Sanders can do against Coleman, it'll be interesting to see how much they look at going with a bigger slot. I don't know that they move Demaryius Thomas around or move him inside much, or if they'll try to do that with Cortland Sutton being a rookie, but we saw Coleman struggle with bigger wide receivers in the preseason. I mean, that's his big weakness. He'll beat you with all the speed and the quickness, but he's gonna lose jump balls, and Thomas and Sutton are two guys that could exploit him that way. Whether Denver actually looks to use him that way or not will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious what your take is on Royce Freeman. I mean, some people think that he's going to break out. Some people think the Broncos running back group is highly questionable. Anyone have a strong feeling on Freeman?
I didn't catch him in the preseason. How did he do?
Well, he won the job.
I mean, I think on the whole, it's not an impressive running back group. Freeman was a nice running back coming out of college. He was a guy I liked for Seattle, but I liked him as like a 3rd or 4th round pick, which I think is right about where he went. But I didn't follow him much. I thought he didn't. I had heard he hadn't played particularly well in the preseason, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, one of the things I'm curious about is, this was the number 1 run defense in the NFL last year. 3.3 yards per carry allowed, which is remarkable. I think the Seahawks, if they're gonna end up with no rushing yards, and that they're going to be trying to establish that, that's going to be trouble. Passing wise, I mean, interestingly, from a sack percentage, they were like 17th in the NFL. So everyone thinks Von Miller, but they had trouble getting to the passer. And Bradley Chubb, who they drafted to help there, has not had particularly strong preseason rushing the passer. So I don't know if pass rush is going to be as good. Obviously they lost Talib. Adam Pac-Man Jones comes in there, and I'm not convinced that he's that great. So I feel like the passing game, again, to Nathan's delight and Mr. Baldwin, who's hopefully listening, really should be a key part of their plan there. There's something I was going to ask you guys, and I just forgot.
While you try to think of it,
yeah.
I will correct myself because I don't know where I heard that Freeman hadn't played well, but he played pretty well. 84 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5.6 yards per carry in the preseason. So that is solid. A couple runs over 20 yards for touchdowns too. So that's cool. I mean, like I said, he was a nice running back coming out of college. He could potentially be someone that is pretty solid for them.
Yeah. Well, the Broncos were also, their defense was 2nd in the NFL in 3rd down percentage allowed. It's 31.6%. So again, I mean, this has been a pretty solid defense. It's not quite the defense it was when they won the Super Bowl, but I guess I'd say this: if the Seahawks can go in there and beat this defense on the road in the road opener, with all the stats that you mentioned, Nathan, in mind, I guess I'd ask: would that change your perspective on what the prospects are for the season?
Evan's having them 16-0 if they win this game.
16-0.
Evan already thinks they're winning this game.
Evan's taking them 16-0. I don't care.
It would for me. I mean, it depends a little on how they do it, but I'm going to swing a lot more on what they do even in just one regular season game than I think I would have or have over the preseason. I think we're going to learn a lot about this team.
Yeah. So last question I have, and then we'll wrap it up. Give me one thing that you're hoping to see in this game, and I'll start. Something that, and maybe something that isn't as expected, or hasn't been the case in the past. At least that's what comes to mind for me. I want to steal two, but I'll leave one that I know someone else probably will take. So I would love to see Brandon Marshall, and more than just Brandon Marshall make an impact, but for the Seahawks to have enough passes in their game plan that the third and fourth receiver are actually a meaningful part of the box score and have more than a single target. So I believe the Seahawks' greatest advantage this year may come in situations where they put more receivers on the field. I think it's one of their stronger groups. And in this game in particular, I think that would be a really good sign if they could get someone like Brandon Marshall, who is a former Bronco, to put up big numbers. Evan, how about you?
It'd be really cool to see our secondary nab a couple turnovers. Cedric Thompson, interception. Shaq, interception. Don't care who does it. I'd love to see some turnovers. We didn't see that in preseason at all, except for I think the one fumble recovered in the end zone, which doesn't even really count. But I'd love to see them get some turnovers. We need to give this offense as many opportunities as possible, and it'd be a glimmer of hope from this defense.
Jeff?
I want to see how Doug Baldwin looks. We haven't seen him at all in the preseason. I just want to see what kind of speed he's playing at, what his routes look like, whatever. His not 100%. I don't know if he's just being humble. It doesn't seem like it's Doug's style. I want to see what he looks like. Him against probably Chris Harris, one of the more interesting matchups in this game. So I'm keyed in on that.
Nathan?
I have another wide receiver that somehow hasn't been named yet, even though we've already gone through two. I want to see what Tyler Lockett looks like. The dude just got paid, and that's a potentially bad contract for Seattle. So I want to see him come out and play like we've seen him play in the past, and I want to see him look healthy. Tyler's super fun. He's an awesome guy. He's really good when he's right, and if he can come out and play well, I think that'd be a really good sign for the season.
Yeah, and none of you said the other one I was going to say, so I'll say that in a second. But Nathan, you wrote a great article this week looking at Schottenheimer's tendencies so far in preseason. That's just preseason. Mm-hmm. One of the things that stood out for me is it seemed like he was passing the ball more often than maybe you expected when you started tracking those plays.
They passed a lot, and there was a weird thing at the end of the Chargers game where they passed 13 times in a row over 2 drives because it was right at the end of the half. But even taking that out, they still passed 60% of the time, which is right about what they did last year. So, yeah, I think they're going to, again, it's preseason. I don't want to count too much on it. It really goes against everything that Shotty and Pete have talked and seem to stand for. But they did pass a bunch. And they did quite a bit of play action and stuff. It's interesting though, because actually they ran as much 2 wide sets and stuff as they seem to have before, but we'll see how that shakes out over large samples. So yeah, I mean, I think that Lockett and Doug both have to be good because I think there is a good chance that they're going to use more 2 wide receiver sets, even though they haven't really showed that quite yet. So seeing both those guys get out there and look healthy would be really cool.
Yeah, so the other one that I have to throw out there is I'm dying to see Chris Carson.
Not Michael Dixon? I thought for sure it was gonna be Michael Dixon.
That one's like a no-brainer. That's not even like a hope. He's going to dominate in Mile High Stadium. He's going to kick the ball out of the stadium.
That's probably true. Actually,
will come over and ask for an autograph. Will hand over the reins as the long punter of the NFL, but. No, Chris Carson, I want to see – I'd love to see what he's going to do as the starter, as a runner, and as a receiver. I really am hoping that they're going to pass the ball to the backs the way that they've started to do in preseason. And I think Rashad Penny's going to get some snaps. I'm really curious to see if he's more than what I have seen so far. I would love to see that running game get some play. So there's a lot of storylines. We'll get into it a little bit more. At least I think Evan and I probably will be unable to go the rest of the week without doing a pod. So Saturday night probably look for another pod where we'll talk the night before and take some questions, open it up to chat, and do all that then. But for now, we'll call it a night. for those that are already Hawk Blogger patrons, thank you guys. All the money goes to a great cause. You can join at patreon.com, patreon.com/hawkblogger. All the proceeds go to Ben's fund. And you get access to the private Facebook group. We have some chats on here where you get invited, and all your questions get answered, and you get to talk to the fellows. So please consider joining. We'd love to have you. And until then, until we next see you, go Hawks.